Reuters put out this article a couple hours ago and unwittingly has revealed the real story of what's happened to Venezuela. Now, the elections are tomorrow, and there are going to be a lot of pictures come out and video come out, and it's going to probably show riots and demonstrations, and they're going to say it's Venezuelans doing it. But really, it's not. It's these Colombian agitators. It's these paramilitary types that have come into the western part of Venezuela and created this fake, false story. They have created some shortages, and they have caused a great deal of problem. But the idea was to get the world to attack Venezuela. Now, unwittingly, though, Reuters blew it with some pictures that they've shown in this article. Now, it's supposed to be this piece where they're talking about this guy and he feels hopeless, and that's why he's leaving Venezuela for Colombia. But the picture shows something very different. And here's how Reuters describes it. Venezuelan National Guard keeps watch next to the Simon Bolivar International Bridge in San Antonio del Táchira, Venezuela, May 16, 2018. Now, here's our soldier. Here's Venezuela. Here's the river looking over to Colombia. Which way are the people walking? Can you tell me? That's right. They're heading toward Venezuela. Why would that guy be carrying a huge box over his shoulder from Colombia into Venezuela? Can you answer me that? Well, it confirms everything that I've told you about these black marketeers. See, what they would do is they would go into Venezuela, buy everything up, and then create these black markets. And when people then brought all of their bolivars to go buy this stuff, marked up 8 and 10 times, these paramilitaries, these Colombian operatives, would then sell the money for the paper to the drug cartels. Now you're thinking, well, that's just a guy with a box. How can you prove that from that? Well, see, there's some more pictures. This is the same area. Here's where the Venezuelan National Guard has picked up this guy and his wife, and they had giant stacks of bolivars that they're confiscating here, and that's what they're saying. Venezuelan National Guard confiscate stacks of bolivar notes that they were taken across the border into Colombia. And this is what they've been trying to do. This is exactly what I said was the case. The black marketeers take the increasingly scarce bolivars and sell them to the cartels, who strip the ink and reprint the paper into U.S. currency. They take the U.S. dollars and charge an huge exchange rate to devalue the currency in Venezuela. And if that weren't good enough, I've showed multiple times that this issue with mass nationwide starvation is not the case. Check this out. Okay, here's the same thing, but check this picture out. This is starving Venezuelans. Starving Venezuelans. Do these people look like they are starving? And what do you think these guys are looking for? The exact same thing. The exact same thing, because they're wise to it. They know what's going down. They know what the game is, but the rest of the world is only being fed this crap story from the MSM. And if you don't think that's the case, this original story that I'm talking about here, see if I can go back to it, talks about the situation in Venezuela is critical, said Guarate, whose grandmother died last year of kidney problems because the family wasn't able to obtain medicine due to drug shortages. Meaning they had the money, but they didn't have the ability to get it because the government of Venezuela didn't have the money to buy it, to bring it in the country. Well, you think, well, that's the cause of socialism, right? I mean, that's the reason that we're talking about all this. You see, here's the story they don't want you to know about what really caused this. They bury this stuff. 300 million frozen by a U.S. judge. And you ready for this? A British court issued an injunction temporarily freezing 12 billion. And when you see PDVSA, that is just the oil wing of the Venezuelan government. So without any due process, without any decision, just while in arbitration, the U.S. and Great Britain seized $12.5 billion of Venezuelan money before convicting him of anything on behalf of, not ConocoPhillips, ExxonMobil, another big oil company trying to take down Venezuela. And if you think this hasn't happened before, let me show you something else. This is Henry Falcone. This is the guy that is running against Nicolas Maduro in this so-called fake election, or this election that's already been decided. Before I do this, let me show you something real quick. See if I can find it. Alright, hold on a second. Okay, it's down here. Okay, yeah, 2013, when Maduro was elected, when he ran in 2013, his rigged election only had him winning by 1.5%. Is that how dictators rig elections, to win by 1.5%? But anyway, Falcone. Now, real quick, just for clarity, down there, red denotes the left, not like up here where red denotes the right. This guy, who is supposedly the current conservative, says he wants to dollarize Venezuela's economy with the help of Wall Street. That means getting rid of the bolivar and having everything be done down there in US dollars. Now, gee, why would the US want that? So that they could have the world's largest oil reserves, the world's fourth largest gold mine, and these new deposits of coltan, all to themselves with people using the US dollar. Oh yeah, and the $100 billion loan from the IMF to do this. You see, this happened before. See that date? This was Argentina. You're like, well, what does this have to do with anything? Well, the U.S. tried this before, and if anybody knows the story of Argentina, it failed miserably. His first proclamation, 2001, early Saturday, was to announce that he would maintain the decade-long policy that pegs Argentina's currency 1-to-1 with the U.S. dollar. But while that move inspired the confidence of many Argentines, Rodriguez Sá also is expected to abandon much of the strict economic orthodoxy promoted by the prior president, meaning that they were going to bow the knee. And this is what they were trying to avoid. He has also said he wants to avoid a devaluation of Argentina's currency that would force a string of bankruptcies and dollarization. Now, very strange, isn't it? Which would substitute the US dollar for Argentina's peso, the largest silver and copper mines in the world. In Argentina, 16, 17 years ago, attacked by the United States, and in this case they won. Because he was trying to avoid this, so he bowed the knee. They did this before, guys. But they're counting on you not paying attention or knowing anything about history. They're trying to get away with it again. And I hope that people will understand why, for the first time in 24 years, the U.S. sent a representative, its own vice president, to the OAS. First time since 1994, a U.S. vice president addressed the Organization of American States. Why? He wanted them to suspend Venezuela. Why? So that Venezuela couldn't get loans from them. They are trying to force Venezuela to its knees. They're trying to take over one of the founding members of OPEC so that they can also force them to vote certain ways. See, the U.S. not being a member has to be able to strong-arm and manipulate countries to vote certain ways. This is what they're trying to do. Now, the last place I'll leave you is this party polarity thing. This is also writer's graphics. It talks about, now remember, blue for them is conservative. Red is liberal. I want you to look at, and it says that here, leans right, leans left. The countries that are conservative, pro-U.S., and the ones that are not. Venezuela, Ecuador, Bolivia, Chile. And I want you to try to correlate that in your mind with the drug war and with who is really responsible for the violence and the drugs in this hemisphere. Look who's right at the top of the list. Colombia, Mexico, Peru, El Salvador, Panama. This is where it all is. You don't hear about Chilean drug cartels. You don't hear about Argentinian or Venezuelan drug cartels, do you? No, you don't. It's all up here. This is what they did. They took their money and then made it as if it was their fault, And they kept it out of the news so that you didn't see it. And they're doing it on the behalf of big oil. Some years back, it was Exxon. Now it's ConocoPhillips doing the same thing. It's not right. So when you see the stories tomorrow, and you see the violence, you'll know what it's really about. Like, share, subscribe.